Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner.
You embrace change, but remember, you constantly change the changeable while steadfastly clinging to the unchangeable. So we don't want to lose those particular things. But change and growth are what life is all about. Change, even if it's painful change, even if it is difficult change, it actually helps us to explore and ultimately get closer to reaching our full potential. But I'll tell you this, that too much comfort is actually dangerous for us. You may wonder, why in the world is something always going on in my life? And let me tell you that stuff going on in your life, you may not appreciate it when you're going through it, but really it helps to keep you on your toes. It actually helps to keep you healthy, because too much comfort is dangerous. Because what will happen if you get too comfortable, you will lose your edge, and sometimes you'll lose your life. I've told you about a research project that was done by UCLA at Berkeley. They found that when an amoeba was placed in an ideal environment where there was just the right amount of moisture, just the right temperature, and they placed food there and water for the amoeba didn't have to work for anything. But guess what? The amoeba died. The amoeba died because it had no struggle. There must be a struggle. There must be a struggle. I mean, there's no rain without lightning and thunder. I mean, there are certain things. There is no progress that doesn't come through agitation. So there has to be something that shakes us out of our comfort zone. So don't ever expect for the things that happen to you in your life to be comfortable. Change is uncomfortable. That's why people recoil from it, because it forces them to change. We don't mind change, we mind being changed. People resist being changed. They just don't want to be changed. Now, let me share with you how our growth manifests itself through maturity. Say maturity. Oh boy, isn't that a buzzword? I think that Scripture associates at least 5 traits with spiritual maturity. And when I say spiritual maturity, I'm just talking just because we are rooted in God. I don't mean this ethereal that's out here because you're trying to be spooky and deep. I mean spiritual in that we are spirit beings led by a spiritual God. Here are 5 traits of spiritual maturity, of just maturity, just 5 markers. And this is to help us so that you can even measure when you're growing. You notice how people, they'll have growth charts, and there's a little scale, and they want to see how tall they are at a certain age, and then you grow to a certain age. And you ever go back and look at your pictures from elementary school and up through high school, or get a yearbook, and see how you've changed, how you've grown over your hairstyles and how your face and all of your clothes that you had on? You ever look back and just seen some of the changes that you've been through over the course of your life? So I want to give you these 5 traits that we associate with maturity. And number 1 is commitment to seeing things through. Commitment to seeing things through is a huge mark of maturity. Is commitment to seeing things through. Commitment to seeing things through. That's real maturity. It's when you can still remain committed to seeing something through even after the emotion has passed. Most people get excited in the beginning, and when the excitement wears off, they put the thing down, and you don't hear anything about it anymore. They fall off the wagon. Maturity, mark of maturity, is a commitment to seeing things through. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9 says, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for you shall reap in due season if you faint not." So he's trying to tell us, listen, he's saying mature now, mature. He says, don't get weary in well-doing. He said, I know you're going to get tired, but listen, don't give up. Don't faint. Because if you do that, you will certainly never get to what you want. Don't get weary. After you've gotten this thing started, you're going to get weary. It's time to make the donuts. You start off excited on a new job, and after you get in there, you know, after 2 weeks, you know, them in your excitement, and it's like you fumbling around trying to find your alarm clock so you can push the snooze button. But maturity, a mark of maturity, is commitment to seeing things through. Be not weary in well-doing. See it through. See your marriage through. Be not weary in well-doing. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. I know you're weary. You get sick of even seeing them coming. But listen, be not weary. Be not weary. Just keep looking straight forward. Don't give anybody any sign that you're dealing with anything at home. Just be committed to see it through, that this is not about my emotions. Too many people make those decisions emotionally, and your emotions are fickle, emotions fickle. But when you mature, it's like, I don't even care about how you feel, because see, I got to see this through. I told you I was going to whip you. Come on in here. You know, I mean, back in the day, they didn't pay any attention to the fact that you were crying, you know, and they would just tell you, you know what, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you, and then they'd go on and beat the tar out of you. I mean, but you know why? They weren't led by their emotions. They were mature enough to see that if I don't discipline you about this right now, there's going to be some other stuff later on down the road. If I don't nip this in the bud, if I don't put the fear of God in you right now, if I don't put respect in you right now, by the time you get 12 or 13, I'm going to have a little sassy mouth child rolling their eyes and telling me what they're not going to do, rolling their head around and putting their hands on their hip and coming back at me. So they are mature enough to realize that I've got to be committed, because I told you that if you did it one more time, and I am committed going there. They would send you out to the yard to get switches. And if you brought one that was too small, they would send you back. Number two, here's another great sign. These are scriptural signs here. Great sign of maturity. This is really a tough one here. Is controlling the tongue. And see, your first and your last words are the most important. Your first and your last words are the most important. In any conversation that you have, your first and your last words. Don't leave a situation on a bad note. Don't start it on a bad note, because you just offended the person. And when you start off with a person wrong, you cut off their hearing. That's what Peter did to the high priest's servant. He took out his sword and cut off his ear. He offended him. He didn't even know what he wanted. He just pulled his sword out and just sliced the man's ear off. He cut off his hearing. He cut off his hearing. Whenever you start with people wrong, because the person is like, you haven't even heard my side of the story yet. You're making assumptions about me, and you're prejudging me. You're not even giving me the benefit of the doubt to explain. Maybe there's a context to this thing that you don't know. A mature person will always hear the matter before he judges it. And so it gives us the ability then to control our tongue. You notice mature people, because they don't just fly off the handle and say anything that comes up in them. They learn how to hold their tongue. There's certain things that you realize, you know what? Your dad is not in a good mood right now, baby. This is not a good time. Just go on back over there and sit down. Go on back to your room. Your dad is not in a good mood. No, this is not the time. And they just know how to control certain things. I mean, some of them, they're not crazy. And they know when they get to that boiling point that if I say another word, I am writing my own death certificate, my own death order. And so they realize, I've got to be able to control my tongue here. They are not, again, controlled by their emotions. It's a great sign of maturity. It's a great, great sign of maturity. If you've got a person who does not offend in their words, this is a perfect person. But perfect in the sense of mature. The word perfect actually means mature. It means mature. Here's the third thing. Spiritual trait, one of the 5 spiritual traits. First one is commitment to seeing things through. Number 2 is controlling your tongue. Number 3 is not complaining. Not complaining. Have you noticed that young people, children, they just complain, oh, it's so hot, oh, it's cold, When you get a certain age and you've been through a whole lot of different stuff, you don't deal with all of that complaining. You get a certain age and grandma has it burning up in her house anyway. It feels good to her. You know. You want to turn the air conditioner? I'll sit down, baby. Don't touch that. But not complaining. Make a note of Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2 verse 14. Do all things without complaining and disputing. The more immature the people are, the more they complain. Every time you ask them to do something that they don't want to do, they start murmuring, complaining. That's just a sign of immaturity. Mature folks know how to say, you know what, okay, I'm going to go on and do that. You know what, you didn't even have to invite me to come with you. You invite some people to come with you and they be complaining the whole time. You invite somebody else out of the do, dog, this potato's cold. The bread ain't even good here. What's that on the side of my glass? And let me just tell you, the more you complain, the more you'll have to complain about. There's something about it. The more you complain, the more you'll have to complain about. A huge mark of maturity. Let me just tell you, my wife and I, we've been out at restaurants, we'll notice old people, couples sitting there, and they don't say two words to each other. Sometimes, you know, I'm like, you know, we will be eating our food and they've been waiting a long time. They don't even say a word. They don't even say, I mean, they could say, well, what are they doing in the kitchen back there? You get a certain age. People who have the shortest amount of time, they have the greatest patience. It's amazing. It's amazing. But see, that's not an accident. That's called maturity. It's called maturity, where you learn not to just fly off the handle and lose your temper. Rarely do you find people in their 80s just laying on the horn, you know, come on, buddy, come on. Here's the fourth thing that is a huge, huge marker for maturity. Patience. Patience. James chapter 1 verse 4. Let patience have her perfect work. Why? That you may be perfect. In other words, mature, entire, wanting nothing. Let patience have her perfect work. That means that God is going to have to put you in some situations where you have to wait, and there's not a blessed thing you can do about it. All you can do is wait. That's all you can do is just wait. You may as well learn to just indulge in some conversation, carry something interesting to read. You may as well, you know, I mean, use your cell phone, call somebody, you know, and make the best of it, because we're going to be put in some situations where you cannot control the speed at which you are serviced, the speed at which they process your application, or any of these particular things, and it will drive you batty until you learn patience. And we'll be saying, you know, come on, God, hurry up, come on, hurry up. And most of the time that we think that we are waiting on God, God's actually waiting on us. And He's waiting on us to slow down so that we learn how to enjoy life, because we are rushing through the very things. I know one of the guys that worked very, very closely with Dr. John Maxwell. He was so excited he'd come into work and he'd just walk right by everybody and go straight to his office and go to work. And Dr. Maxwell went into his office and he said, what are you doing? He was just pulling his papers out of his briefcase, getting things lined up on his desk. He said, I'm here to do my work. I'm going to work. And Dr. Maxwell pointed out to him, he said, you just passed by your work. You just passed by your work. They were the people that were in the office with whom he should have been having some interest of developing relationship and at least the human courtesy. If you're going to be in an establishment where you have to see these individuals every day, you may as well make some friends and be cordial and just say, good morning, how are you guys doing this morning? But he just walked in, lipped tight, and went straight to his room. He had to learn some real people skills, and it's just patience that you have to just learn to take time and walk slowly through the crowd.